All right, Derek, I'm going to throw a bunch of topics at you, just random things to have fun as the offseason continues before we get into starting to practice. So this is a little segment we used to do in radio called This or That. So you just pick one of these. All right. More likely, let's start us off with recruiting. What is more likely? Illinois signs two more preps in the class of 2023, or Illinois signs no more preps in the class of 2023?
I will say no more preps. I know that will bum people out on the Drake Gibbs Lawhorn front, which I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying more likely
Yeah.
is none, because I think two is pretty unlikely at this point. I just think that they'd love to get Gibbs Lawhorn, knowing that he's a guard that can come in and add to that backcourt, but I don't think they'll push the envelope of trying to get three high school guys. Now, if things break a certain way, if they can get Alex Tui from Australia, Gibbs Lawhorn, and Amani, they would be more than happy. They'd be thrilled. They'd pull the trigger on that. But there are just more outcomes where it goes the other way. You have Hansberry, and I wrote it back in the summer, based on the way that the class has played out. It's not the strongest class in the world. You got a lot of guys that can come back. If they got Hansberry and no one else and went to the portal and did the rest of their work, staff would be more than happy. I still think that's the case, and I think that we might see that happen. Although I think that I know that they're trying to be a big player for Gibbs Lawhorn. I think they're in a decent spot right now.
Yeah, and even if that happened, and say you had three guys in your front court go pro with Shannon and Meyer and Hawkins, you'd have a pretty good sell, right? Like you'd still have Ty Rodgers there, you would think, unless he has an amazing year. You'd still have RJ Melendez, you'd still have talent there, Luke Goody, but you could have a great sell to all these transfers. Dane Dange, I want to mention him too. All right, who scores more points per game? Terrence Shannon or Matthew Meyer?
I'm going with Terrence Shannon. I know that this isn't a surefire answer. I think if you polled people around the program, you might get. I don't know if it's a 50 split, but Meyer would get some votes for sure. And some feel like Meyer is more of a dynamic offensive player in terms of he can do more things. He's more talented off the dribble. It's just something that he is more apt to be able to do, where Terrence isn't creating his own shot a whole lot. I mean, he can straight line drive with the best of them. You give him a baseline drive to the rim, and he's gonna dunk all over you. It's just kind of playing in a pick and roll. Meyer can do that. Shannon, you're probably not going to see a whole lot of. But I think for a team that's going to run a ton, plays right into Shannon's strength. He's developed himself into a really good catch and shoot guy. I mean, he was in the 94th percentile catch and shoot last year. So if you have someone, whether it's Ty, whether it's Coleman, and that's the great thing about this team, other guys that can break teams down off the dribble, hit Shannon in the corner or on the wing, he can make a three. And I think that with his back being healthier, we're going to see him get to the free throw line a lot more. And he's a 78, 79% career free throw shooter. So I like Shannon. I'm curious where you're at on this one, but Shannon is my vote.
Yeah, I would go Shannon. I think in transition, I think he's going to play minutes too. I just think he's going to play probably the closest to 30 minutes on the team. Maybe him and Coleman would be the top two guys there for me. He just reminds me, I don't know, I can't get the Nebraska guards out of my head from Tim Miles era, like Teran Petaway. I'm looking these guys up. James Palmer. He reminds me of like those guys who end up going to Nebraska averaging like 16, 18 points. Illinois, he won't have to do that. I just think the ceiling or the floor is very high for Terrence Shannon. He's already shown he can average 12 a game. Matthew Meyer hasn't done that. I know he was on a great team, but so was Terrence Shannon. So I just think the 3-pointers are a little bit more reliable with Terrence Shannon over his career. And I think in transition, he's going to be unstoppable. And I think he might get to the free throw line more, Derek, just because of his strength. And I would probably put him at 14 and probably put Meyer in the 12 to 13 range, probably put Coleman in the 11, 12 range, right? Like, and then another guy at 10, another guy at 8. But yeah, I just think the floor is already proven to be higher with Terrence Shannon. And he just seems like, I'm just reading a lot of what you write, Derek. He seems like he's the dude. Like he's the kind of the guy who's kind of turning into the leader, whether it's the guy that's a work ethic leader or just the guy people look up to is like, oh, that's our guy.
Yeah, for sure. He's the alpha dog. That's been established early on. He did get here earlier than Matthew Meyer did, and Meyer was out a little bit with a back ailment of his own. But yeah, I agree. I think everything you said there with Shannon, the way he can score, and then he's just. I know I hesitate. We've joked about this in the podcast. When Brad throws out Io, puts Io in the same sentence as someone else, like, whoa, are you sure? He said, Iowa work ethic. I think you start to hear about leadership and just kind of pulling other guys his direction. And we know that he's tough as nails too. So that's all boding well for Terrence Shannon right now.
Let's be honest, Derek, that's why he came here.
Yeah.
Came here to be the guy. So I think that's a huge reason. All right. Who has a bigger leap from last season, Coleman Hawkins or RJ Melendez?
I think Coleman will have the better season. I can understand if you're to say RJ would have maybe more room to leap versus what Coleman did last year. I'm still going to go with Coleman, though. Coleman being a projected NBA draft pick, and then also just hearing, and you take some of the stuff with a grain of salt in terms of offseason buzz. And, Brad saying that Coleman had as good an offseason as anybody, but that lines up with what I've heard. Is he going to translate into games where some things slow down for him? He's less mistake prone, but we just know that Coleman has, and not to say that RJ doesn't, Coleman has so much ability to be just a really darn good two-way player. He's already shown it defensively. I think it's just continued to make that on a nightly basis. He's someone that can shut somebody else down. And then offensively, he's got room to grow the three-point shot. I think he's got the potential to make the strides there, and then do more off the dribble to where he's more trustworthy to make those plays and not be out of control. I think I'm going Coleman, but I understand if you said RJ because RJ maybe has more room to jump.
Yeah, I mean, I can see RJ going from 4 points a game to 9, 10 this year. That's certainly a huge leap. While Coleman is 5 to, he had 6 per game last year to like maybe 10 or 11. But I do think it's going to be. We got to remember where Coleman Hawkins was in early February. All right, he was out of the rotation, like barely in the rotation, and then he turned into a starter and one of the best players on this team by the end of the year. So I know that's our last kind of thought of who Coleman Hawkins is, but like that's still very small sample size of what he was last year. So I think he should be an all Big Ten defender. Like I keep saying that needs to be his goal. And then if he continues over the last 9 games, he shot 35% from 3. If he just maintains that, Derek, and is a good rebounder and attacks the offensive glass, he could be one of the most unique players in the Big Ten at his length, his skill, the ability to get up and down the court. I love that he doesn't have to be a go-to scorer on this team. And the other reason I won't pick RJ is because Terrence Shannon and Matthew Meyer are here. That's going to limit his scoring ability, though I think we're going to see it in spurts. I could see a game RJ goes for 20, the next game he only needs to score 5. But I still think Coleman Hawkins has the chance to be one of the best players in the Big Ten. I don't know if this is the year for RJ to be that. I could see that as his junior year. But I've always mentioned the DJ Wilson comp, and DJ went from role player, bench player to all of a sudden he was like the 3rd leading scorer for Michigan, but he was just such a unique piece on what was a Big Ten championship tournament championship team that we saw in DC. And after that terrible flight. But I still think it's Coleman. I agree with you there. All right. Who starts more games? I think this might be the best question.
Tough one.
Dane Danger, who some people have slid into the 5. I think we're starting to back off that a little bit. The hype, the Underwood offseason hype train is calmed a little bit on that one. So Dane Danger or the hype man right now, Ty Rodgers, who starts more games for Illinois this year?
It's funny, if you would have went back to May, maybe early June, some people would tell you that Dane was going to be the starting 5-man. And then it progressed to where Coleman's earned that or is trending towards being the starting 5-man. Dane going to play significant minutes still, but off the bench as a 5. I'll say Ty. I think Ty is already – I think RJ will get the nod. I think that's kind of the choice. Ultimately, you're going to have Sky Clark, Shannon, Meyer, Hawkins, and then do you start Ty? Do you start RJ? I would imagine Brad goes with the veteran first and foremost. And then I think you're fine with putting Ty in a rotation off the bench with Jaden Epps and with Dane. But Ty's going to be hard to keep off the floor. I know Brad cares more about finishing lineups than those that start. And it sounds like they want Ty on the floor to finish games. He's going to have to shoot the ball, at least show that he's willing and capable, I think, to make that someone that they don't just automatically dork, as Brad says. But Ty just continues to trend in a great direction. Coming off USA, had a really good summer. And outside of the jumper, he just does everything. And I know you've stuck on that bandwagon early. I'm sure
Yeah.
you're on that one as
I mean,
well.
anybody who goes sees Ty Rodgers live, like I think he had like 11 points when I saw him, and I'm like, I want that guy on my team. I love everything about him outside the jumper, but like he can improve that, and even if that's not a strength, I think he can be a really good player. The whole Dane just starting thing, I think it makes people nervous because Hunter Dickinson's in the conference, Zach Edey's in the conference. Listen, Kofi's not here anymore. You don't have a good matchup for him. And Dane will be important in those games, right? You could see, someone else like they need some big bodies to throw at those guys. But I also think about Zach Edey and Hunter Dickinson trying to guard Coleman Hawkins. Like I think it's a death lineup when you can have Coleman, Matthew Meyer, Terrence Shannon, RJ Melendez, and a point guard, Sky Clark, whoever, Jaden Epps. Like that is so much length, so much athleticism. Iowa gave so many teams fits with those kind of lineups last year when they had the Murray brothers, and Illinois is even longer and more athletic. Like play that group. Like Dane can come in, be kind of the relief pitcher, be the kind of matchup guy. But going from 0 minutes last year basically to all of a sudden being a 20-minute, I just never thought that was realistic. So I've always kind of been the Coleman starts guy. We'll see what Dane does once he gets on the court. I just think that's such a tough matchup for almost every team in the Big Ten when you're that long everywhere. So I will go Ty because I can see Ty pushing RJ at some point this season. If there's some injuries, Ty can step in and be that guy. You're so versatile. I think versatility is your key. Dane can be a part of that. But man, that lineup with Coleman in there at the 5, I just think is awesome.
Your death lineup, there's a situation where the point guard to that death lineup might be Ty. Ty, RJ, Shannon, Meyer, and Hawkins. Some would say that if Sky, is on the bench, or if something were to happen with Sky's knee again, that Ty would get a lot of minutes at point guard. He might slide in there a little bit anyway.
That's a group of 4 shooters around him.
It's true.
He can make that work as long as he can handle, and he can handle. He can handle pretty dang well. All right, let's stick with Ty here a little bit. More likely all freshman team selection, Ty Rodgers or Sky Clark?
This is kind of tough because I know the media likes their counting numbers. And I know that Sky, points wise, is going to have more than Ty, I would imagine. And then, especially if we see the Sky Clark pre-injury or even just somewhere close, as he's had time to rehab here through the fall, he's going to have time to get back to as close as he can. And he's a very good shooter. He's really, really good off the dribble. It's whether can he explode by guys and everything like that.
Can I correct one thing?
Yes.
We vote for freshman of the year. Us media, the coaches vote for all freshman team.
Oh,
it's a little.
That's going to lean right in. I was going to pick Ty anyway. I was kind of just, I wasn't filibustering. I was just kind of breaking it all down. But I think Ty has a much higher floor, especially because of the injury with Sky. And coaches wise, in terms of defense, passing, I mean, Sky's going to be able to rack up some assists too, but I think Ty will. I mean, that last note about coaches will really boost him. I would just have a hard time picking Sky because I coming off the injury, I think is a tough ask to be an all Big Ten player. I think he'll be good, but I would trust Ty more. I just think he's riding so much momentum as he's going into the season with USA, with the summer. And
I mean, it's fair to say this is not the strongest freshman class, right? Coming into the Big Ten. Hood Schifino, Sky Clark, Ohio State, was it Sensabaugh, probably their top guy coming in?
They had 3 top 75 guys, but I don't think anybody in the top 50. Malik Renew is another guy at Indiana, the big man that's, I think, right inside of the top 50. So, yeah, you don't see that 5-star like a Diabate, Houston, Max Christie, which we've seen in the past.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like the best. So I think they both can make it. It was kind of going to be my point. If they both play a big role on a potential Big Ten contender, I'll still go with Sky Clark because he's going to play a lot of minutes. Like as long as he's healthy, he should be a 8 to 12 point a game guy, several assists, because they don't have another point guard. Like, is Ty Rodgers or Jaden Epps their backup point? I don't know. I would imagine Jaden Epps plays it, and we'll get to him here in a moment. But there's really not another guy. So they're counting on him, like kind of like Ohio State last year. Eventually had to count on Malachi Branham. I'm not projecting that year. Maybe he could eventually get to those numbers, but Sky Clark was a highly ranked prospect. If he's healthy, he's going to get a lot of minutes and he's going to play a lot. So and score. So I'll still go with Sky Clark there, even though I couldn't be higher on Ty Rodgers and what he's going to do in the line of uniform. All right, one more.
That's even real quick, like Chucky Hepburn last year had to play a bunch of minutes at point guard for Wisconsin.
Yep. And he was all freshman team, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Chucky was the last one. It was Bryce McGowan's, Malachi, Christie, and Diabate. Houston didn't even make it last year. All right. Who averages more points for this Illinois team? Jaden Epps or Luke Goody?
I'm going Jaden Epps. I think
more
that
role,
Jaden,
right?
yeah, I think there's more of a clear path to playing time. I know that one of the concerns out of the summer was his ability to make good decisions off the dribble as your playmaker. Like if he's playing the point guard in relief of Sky, imagining he comes off the bench, how is that going to go? Can he solidify that he is the point guard? Because that will pave the way for him to get more minutes versus if it's like, actually Ty is the better ball handler and we trust him to make better decisions, then maybe it's harder for Jaden Epps to solidify how many minutes he's going to get. But I know that they know he's a pure bucket getter and he can just score from anywhere. I know he's been a bit of a volume shooter, but he can really get going. I imagine there are going to be games. He's not going to go Alfonso Plummer where he's going to hit 4 threes or maybe he will. But
remember Rocket Watts his freshman year?
Yeah.
Jaden Epps got a lot about that, a little bit of that, doesn't he? Like just certain games could look ugly. Other games, you're going to be like, who's this kid? Like, why isn't this guy the starting point guard? I think he's going to have a few of those performances.
That's a good call. And I fell madly in love with freshman year Rocket Watts. I put him on my all Big Ten preseason the next year, and I looked like a big dummy. But Luke Goody, just because of the wings in front of him. I mean,
nobody was more impacted by this offseason. Like Luke had a starting spot when it was just 5 guys on this team. I really like Luke Goody. He does a lot of things that help you win basketball games. Might be the best shooter on this team. He's just not as athletic and as good defensively, even though I think he's a really good team defender. But nobody was impacted more by the additions of Terrence Shannon and Matthew Meyer than Luke Goody. And when you think Melendez is probably going to have a bigger role than him, it's just, I think Luke Goody is going to be a very important piece of this program, but his minutes probably went from 25 in April to all of a sudden, can he get 10? Can he get 12 minutes? I don't know.
Yeah, it will be tough for him. I'm not necessarily doubting him because he will have the trust of Brad Underwood to do the right things, to play hard, rebound, and make threes. And if there is a situation where Ty's playing more as a guard, that could open up a spot for Luke to play, backup 4-man or to be on that wing in relief of Meyer and Shannon. And you got to throw Melendez in there as well. I just think that it is tough because of the traffic in front of him, and you're going to need guard play. And I think Epps I know it's hard sometimes to rely on freshmen to be efficient and that whole thing as far as scoring, but I mean, that's his best quality. I think he will come in and get some buckets, and I'll go Jaden Epps.
And you know what I love about Luke Goody? He's going to be ready whenever they need him. And I don't want this to be a segment that's like, he's not there. I think he's really good. There's a reason Tom Izzo wanted him, and I think he's going to be a really important piece. And I think it's a great thing when we're sitting here saying, man, how are we going to find Luke Goody minutes? Like, whose minutes is he stealing? Like, that tells you what Brad Underwood is putting together here. All right, Derek, I didn't mention Sincere Harris on here. The one thing I like about him is, man, he's bouncy. Didn't mention Brandon Lieb on here. So sorry to the Lieb fans. It is Lieb season soon enough. And Zachary Perrine, we're still waiting word on when he'll be on campus. So I don't want to not mention guys, because when you don't not mention one of the 12 scholarship players, people ask why. So any thoughts on those guys?
Why didn't you mention Paxton Wharton? That's my thought. I'm just kidding.
Got to get the walk on. Got to get the walk on.
Oh, the fans keep us in check. But right. Yeah, Sincere, there's going to be a game early where Illinois, maybe it's Eastern, one of those games. It will be quick. The fan base will be big, sincere Harris fans, because he's going to either dunk on somebody or get in somebody's face and talk trash. And he's just a real gritty player that needs to add strength, and it'll take some time for him to develop, but he'll
My
be easy to love.
my future comp is Tajay Moore, who just killed Illinois from
Yeah.
Houston. Like, that's my future comp.
Oh.
It's gonna take a while to get there.
If he turns into that, I mean, you'll take that 10 times out of 10.
Yeah. And then we'll see on Perrine. We're still waiting a word on that. So when we have news on that, we will let you know.